愚かな我が声に応じ、今一度成果の可能。ファイアボルト！ルミナスウィンドウ！すごい。
Wow, what an episode. The Banquet of Tragedy. I loved that, by the way. I absolutely loved this episode. And last week, I went in pretty hard. And the reason for last week, and I just want to make sure I clarify this up front, the reason for last week's kind of like real critical view of last week's episode was just because of Belle's inconsistency. I always kind of get a little irritated when you have a main character and the writer cannot decide on kind of how they want to be. Because at some points, Belle is like the sharpest tool in the shed. And at some points, he's like, ugh, you know what I mean? And there is some disparity in that. And as a viewer, you know, especially, you know, when I'm looking at it, it's like from a critical view, and you guys may feel the same exact feeling as well, that inconsistency can kind of mess with the way that you kind of view the anime. You're like, yeah, why are you looking at this in this way? You know what I mean? Like with this whole Ryu stuff, it's like again, the example that I made last week, which I'll say one more time, is it reminds me of Ash Ketchum in Pokemon. When he goes to a new region and he sees a Squirtle for the first time, he's like, oh, a Squirtle! And he gets his Pokédex out, and the Pokédex has to tell him, Squirtle, a water-type Pokemon. It's like, you have one, dude. You have one at Professor Oak's camp, place, whatever, you know? So, the reason I bring that example up is he knew Ryu's backstory. He knew her revenge cycle. He knew the whole, like, evilist stuff. Like, he wasn't ignorant to anything, so he's not finding something out for the first time. He's not finding out the way that she views or does her actions for the first time. So his immediate, like, surprise and baffledness really took me back. All right, so I'm going to say for last week's stuff, and now we're going to move on to this week. So this one was the Banquet of Tragedy, and the first thing that I noted here was, like, I cannot wait to see how Cassandra's prediction is kind of going to play out here. And as you guys know, by seeing the end of the episode, the prediction that she had, she was baffled that it didn't come true, and she was kind of right when certain actions begun to take place, and she was like, oh no, this is the great disaster that's actually coming for us right now. I also wrote down, let's see Belle Cordell not be a little bitch this week. I was very glad that was the case. We see that. Oh, I have to let you guys know this too. I also took a note. I was like, yo, Ryu got a fat ass. So I just have to put that out there as well. But initially, we found out that the guy that they were after, this freaking, I don't remember what his name was at this point. I didn't write down his name, but this dude that they were after, you know, lost his arm, lost his ear. We found out that those two things actually occurred during the initial attack of Evilis that Ryu did on them. So this is the dude that ended up getting away, and everything that's occurred this episode was because of his revenge, his revenge path back to Ryu, right? And the lost arm and lost ear were actions that had been taken originally against him by Ryu, and he barely got away with the skin on his back, but he was missing an arm and an ear. And thankfully, this episode, Belle was like, no, I believe in Ryu. I believe in you, because here's what I found. I found a blaze. What did they call it? A blaze shell or something like that. I wrote it down. Blaze rock. So he found a blaze rock, and that was what caused all those people in this dude's party to just die. And he found the blaze rock, and he was like, yo, you did this. Like, I know that you did this. This wasn't her. And we come to find that everything gets unraveled. This dude loses his mind, and he goes completely crazy. He goes like, oh yeah, I did it, blah, blah, blah. He set off the blaze rock. He worked on killing that guy inside of the Riveria town. He was the one that set everybody on the warpath against the Gale Wind. He set all of these actions up to try and get back to her so he could see despair in her face. Just crazy stuff, right? So we finally find that out. And again, he was trying to get revenge for just being hunted. during all of this, we see that there is experiments that have been done, which I found this really interesting. We found out that there was experiments being done on certain floors inside the dungeon against monsters that were from the lower floors and deep floors. And apparently, we found out later on when the snake thing came out. Apparently, this was created by Gnosis, and they had created forbidden items to control monsters. So when we saw the episode, we saw monsters with like those jewels, like yellow jewels, pendants on them, and essentially they created some kind of forbidden item that has like magic or something that could basically control any monster. So these dudes, I was like, yo, are they tamers? But essentially they kind of are, but they are because of these forbidden items. Then we see that he finally calls the snake monster. It comes into full fruition here. The snake monster was called like Liverbia or something crazy like that. So what ends up happening, obviously you guys saw Belle and Ryu take on one, and then Lilia and the rest of the party, take on the other one, and they both pull out. They both pull out of that, and they both defeat their own respective monsters. One because of the wit, the good planning on one side, and then the other one was just kind of brute force on one side, and then Ryu and Belle's planning on how to go about it. Now, both of those scenes, more Ryu and Belle's fight scene, I loved a lot. I loved seeing the luminous wind by Ryu. I loved seeing Belle, bust out his firebolt. I thought that was a dope scene, and I loved seeing it. I thought that it was very well animated. I love seeing Ryu kind of like be in action. Like, I was kind of blown away by the action this week, and I was very appreciative of seeing more action, because it's kind of been like a rarity. I feel like it's been a rarity a little bit as of late. I feel like we've gotten a lot of like story, character building, world building, but we haven't really gotten a lot of action scenes in a while. At least that's kind of like my personal feels. Like, we get little spurts of them fighting monsters, but like a legit action scene we haven't really gotten in a while. So I was really appreciative towards that this week, because I thought that it was really badass. All in all, at the end of it, we see that this dude, because the party had let the other guys get away, they set off a bunch of other blaze rocks everywhere, and everything goes to shit at this point. And he did something like just completely sinister. He basically got the dungeon to go in full defense mode. And because the dungeon going in defense mode, it's like he basically activated, by setting off all those blaze rocks, he basically activated the dungeon's defense systems, which is calling some kind of like calamity. And we saw kind of like Ryu literally shaking. So she must have encountered whatever this is that's gonna come next, must be like hell incarnate, because she was like losing her crap about it. And I think even Cassandra was like, yo, a disaster cometh. And I was like, shit, here we go. So we have all of that occurred. So this really set the stage for what's going to come next. And for this season right now, we're on episode number 9 so far. So we're gonna get these battles, and I cannot freaking wait for it. So overall, like, this episode was absolute fire. I loved the whole entire setup. I love that we keep getting the Cassandra callback to her prediction to her visions. And I am nervous for what's going to come next. And I was a little bit mad, too, so I don't know if you guys felt it. I was mad that Belle didn't let Ryu just kill this dude. I was like, yo, let her kill this guy. Like, he's a piece of crap, you know what I mean? Kill this dude. But regardless. Last thing is, apparently, we did find out, too, that the monsters being controlled with those little medallions, if they set them free, they're going to go on rampages. So it's better just to defeat them. But overall, this episode, 9 out of 10. I was taken aback by all of it. I love all the different things that we found out this episode. This crazy-ass dude, Banquet of Tragedy, a great disaster cometh. For real. 9 out of 10 episodes was solid. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys being here another week. Thank you guys for listening to all of my thoughts this week. And now I'm interested to hear yours in the comments as always. Obviously, if you can, please avoid spoilers. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.